Hello again, welcome back to the PhatPhish Guitar Studio for another scale of the week. Now in these videos sometimes we look at some of the more fundamental scales that have a bit of a refresher on things that you really should have in your scale vocabulary, things like majors, minors, pentatonics and so on. Or we'll take a look at something that you might not have come across before but you might want to incorporate into your scale vocabulary because it can help you be a bit more creative and come up with some other options in your playing. And the scale we're going to have a look at and listen to today definitely falls into that second category because we're going to be looking at the WholeTone Scale. As the name suggests, it's all built around whole tones, intervals of 2 semitones. So we start from a root note, we go up by 2 semitones, a whole tone there, and another whole tone, 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 gets us back to the octave. So as you can hear, that sounds a little bit different to some of the scales you might have heard before. Most significantly, it's got the equivalent of a flat fifth in it. Because this is a geometric, what you call a geometric scale, it's more of a mathematical division of the octave. It's not so easy to think of this scale in terms of the notes being, relative to the major. When we talk about the natural minor, we say it's like the major scale, but with a flat third, a flat sixth, and a flat seventh. Or we talk about something like a major scale, but with an added flat 5 or something like that. With the WholeTone Scale, really it's best just to think of it as a group of intervals between notes and think about what the notes are, so like the equivalent of. And as I say, we've got a note here which is 3 whole tones above this note, and that's equivalent to a rather strange sounding interval, the flat fifth. Before we talk about how you can use the scale, let's have a look how you actually play it. So we'll fire up PhatPhish and have a look at a WholeTone Scale based around a root note of A. So here you can see the A whole tone scale, and because it's such a mathematical division of the octave, it's a very regular pattern of notes across the neck. In terms of like a box sort of pattern, rather than just a strict box where you go across the fingerboard, I think something where you're playing 3 notes per string, something like this where you're actually moving up and down the fingerboard as well as across, is actually quite a usable shape. So as always, be aware of where the notes in the scale are right the way across the fingerboard, and use basic boxes to get familiar with how it sounds, but always be prepared to explore the whole fingerboard when you play. Now what's interesting to note about this scale is how repetitive the pattern is, because you've just got whole tone after whole tone after whole tone. If you look at the scale like this, where we've got A as the root note, let's have a look at the notes of B whole tone. As you can see, it's exactly the same notes. The only difference is in one case A is the root and the other case B is the root. So in effect, if you see the notes laid out of any given whole tone scale, you're actually seeing the notes of 6 different whole tone scales depending on which note you regard as being the root note. So in terms of how we can put this scale to use, playing over chord progressions and so on. As always, what you need to do is look at what notes there are in the scale and how they relate to the notes of the chords you might be playing over the top of. So this scale's a little bit funny, and it hasn't got an equivalent of a 5th degree, but it has got something that's equivalent of a flat 5th, which is something that's a bit of a tricky customer. But if you think about the notes of, say, like a dominant 9 flat 5 chord, this is the sort of thing you come across in like jazz sort of playing. Let's have a look at it in PhatPhish in arpeggio mode of the notes within a dominant 9 flat 5. And now let's have a look at the notes of the WholeTone Scale based upon the same root. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of overlap there. So if you're presented with a chord progression where you've got like a dominant 9 flat 5 chord, you might want to experiment with the WholeTone Scale over the top of it. Another context where you might want to think about using the WholeTone Scale is in a bluesy context, to get you away from just playing straight minor pentatonic, flat 5 sort of things. Minor pentatonic, flat 5. Flat 5th, the blue note. And you've got the equivalent of a flat 5th in the WholeTone scale. You've also got something that's equivalent of a third, and you've got something that's equivalent of a flat 7. The root, the third and the flat 7th are quite strong tones in a dominant 7 chord, which is quite a bluesy sort of sounding chord, and that flat 5th degree crops up in the minor pentatonic flat 5, the minor blues scale, but it also occurs in the WholeTone scale. So if you're playing like a bluesy type of progression where you want to get that flat 5 in, think about using the WholeTone scale. As always, just take a bit of time to get familiar with the way you play the scale, the way that the scale sounds, and get your ear tuned into it. It's a little bit unusual compared to some of the scales you might already be familiar with, so be prepared to take time and get used to it. Experiment and see if it's a scale that you think is for you and you can incorporate into your playing. As always, be looking for overlap and commonality between the scale and the underlying chords, and think about how the notes of the scale relate to the notes of the chords and sort of tensions or whatever that you're going to get when you're using that scale over the top of a chord progression. Okay, so that's something for you to experiment with over the coming week and onwards. As always, experiment, have fun. If you want to ask any questions, don't forget you can send me a message through the Ask Me a Question page on the PhatPhish website. And if you're not already subscribed to the PhatPhish YouTube channel on YouTube, please click on the subscribe button down there, and your subscription is very much appreciated. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in another video sometime soon. Bye for now.